Because when I was going through my general discussion yesterday about materials used for tools, and I got to antler and bone, and I think in the popular mind, people don't realize that this stuff's really very hard. And as you can see here, you're using it, working with stone, and it's working very effectively.
It's kind of, with flint knapping, there's a lot of analogies to a lot of the physical things that we see in our world in terms of like playing baseball or golf or pool or something. There's the angles, the force, the direction, the amount of energy that you need to do it. It's all in there in terms of the stone tool making. As with a majority of the tools that we make and use today, our axes, our saws, our chisels and things like that, all the edges that we use on those materials all come from the same tools, edges that we find on stone tools. So, and when you get right down to it, metal's just another kind of rock that comes out of the ground that we do something else with. So, but you know, for all intents and purposes, this arrowhead's pretty much done. You can get fancier with this. One of the things that you need to do is put a notch in here. And it doesn't take much to do that. And what, you know, for all intents and purposes, an arrowhead, it allows, you know, it does have the ability to puncture into an animal, but what it does really is add some ballast to the end of your arrow too. So, and it's still legal in the state of Washington to hunt with arrowhead, stone tip projectile points. That'd be a 7-point broad point. But you know, a little arrowhead takes what, 5 minutes to make? It doesn't take very long at all. It's very small. So it's when you get right down to it, it's not the arrowheads that are important. I did a 6,000 piece collection out of Wenatchee a few years back, and less than 1% of that collection were stone tool projectile points. Most everything were little flakes and tools that were like this, that in terms of working on tools like wood, leather, okay, watch here when you turn this. It's peeling off curls here without very little edge damage. It's pretty amazing. I had a friend of mine from Connecticut, by the name of Jim Dina, that used stone tools and built an entire birch bark canoe with stone tools and went 1,700 miles up the Connecticut River without any fire, without any steel, and made everything with stone tools. And he came over to visit me, and he showed me what to do with these things. It's pretty amazing to watch somebody who knows what they're doing with these stone tools to actually use it. So there's a lot more in terms of technology that goes on than just arrowheads and projectile points. So let me get started and finish up this, what we're making here. Now, if we talk about archaeology here on the Northwest Coast, we have some of the most amazing sites in the world found here on the Northwest Coast, sites that date back 10, 12,000 years ago. One of the most recent discoveries is the site that we have in Wenatchee of these Clovis points, or points that are like this, that have what are called a flute out the backside. And it's on both sides here, where they knock a flake off the backside of here. This is a tool that was used by Native Americans about 11,500 years ago. Their primary game seemed to have been mammoths. We find their tools all over the Northwest, or all over North America, from Nova Scotia all the way through tips of Washington here. We find these fluted kind of points all the way down south, as far as south as the tip of Terra del Fuego in South America, 10,000 years ago. What we don't know is whether, when the first people came into the New World, or the people came into the New World, and earliest evidence that we have, solid evidence, is somewhere between 12 and 15,000 years ago, whether they came in with this idea. They came into a place where there weren't a lot of people, and they created this idea and then moved with the technology into the New World, first into that central part of the Four Corners, you know, the Colorado, Arizona, and that area. And then from there, the idea spread out and hit these different areas. Or whether people first populated the North America first and then came in, and then after a couple thousand years, and then technology was invented, and then the idea spread out from there in terms of diffusion. So we don't know. We do have Clovis points in Washington. Up at Wenatchee again, there's these tools that we have up there. There's the largest collection of Clovis points ever found. They are the largest Clovis points ever found. And they're stored right now in Tacoma at the State Historical Society Museum. There's waiting to do some serious analysis on there. We'll see what happens when it comes out of those things. But we do have a variety of other points that come out of western Washington here. One is, for example, out of Carnation, Marymore Park. We find some on Whidbey Island. There's one found down in Olympia. And these tend to have been made out of basalts, which is pretty dense material. But we also have a time period, that early time period between 13 and 10,000 years ago in Washington, where we don't have stylistic stone tools. It's what we call a pebble tool complex. And we find examples of that up at Squim, where they hunted a mastodon. And in the mastodon, we find a bone point stuck in one of its vertebrae. So we know that people were here at least 10,000 years ago. How they got in here, and that kind of is something we still need to figure out. We also know at Marnes Rock Shelter out in the Snake River, some almost 300 miles inland, that at 9 to 10,000 years ago, we had one of the first human beings found in North America. We also find there, dated at about 9,000 years ago, Olivella and Dentalia shell, which all come off the southern coast of Vancouver Island at 200-foot depth. So somewhere back then, somebody knew where these materials were, and they were able to get these things out there. So people have been traveling around here for quite a while. It's pretty amazing stuff. Stone tools are a big part of what they're doing here. So the early time period is where we find these, what we call the Paleo Hunters. And throughout North America, there was great big game, what we call the Pleistocene megafauna, which are the big critters, cold weather adapted critters like mammoths, mastodons, the direwolf, giant three-toed sloths. And these are all critters that went extinct within about 2,000 years, between 10 and 8,000 years ago. We think there's a variety of reasons. One is particularly the climate changed. It got warmer, and a lot of these critters probably couldn't make it as easily, didn't have the same kind of food. We know that down in Phoenix, Arizona is where we had, the climate was very similar to what we find here in, or not here, but up in the Arctic tundra. We had Arctic fox and rabbits and hares and those kind of things down there. But we lost 26 family or genera of animals between 10 and 8,000 years ago. And one of the biggest reasons we think were these, what we call the Paleo Hunters. These were big game hunters that did some serious hunting. And what we find them doing is designing their tools, these early flint knappers, designing their tools to, for the particular animals that they were hunting. The Clovis points were designed to go after in fact, fit between the ribs of the mammoths. They were fitting right between them where we find them. We also find the next phase of people, the culture that leaves a stylistic tool, the Folsom folks, between about 9 and about 10,000 years ago, which are also, they're also making fluted points. It's much more complex of a point. It's smaller, thinner, and the flute flakes run all the way to the tip on both sides and make it, it's an incredibly complex tool to make. And so these people were hunting the bison antiquus with these things, and we know that they were using a variety of hunting techniques. One of them was to drive the game over cliffs into arroyos, where they killed literally thousands of them. And then when there's one place where we, at Lindermeyer Folsom, I believe, is where we find they had about 1,000 animals in a pit, and they only took like half of 50 of them, which what we're saying is small populations of people, between 30 and 50, a hunting-gathering population that are being able to do this, that type of hunting.